It seems all the participants are here, so we can start our webinar. My name is Stan Barenko, and today with me, with my colleague Ivana Kirik and James Bryce from Intelligent Delivery Solutions. Today we'll talk about test automation, about when the project needs automation actually, and guys will be glad to share their experience. We'll have, as usual, Q&A session after the webinar. I guess we'll start. We'll start from Ivana and her presentation, her opinion, her vision, actually, when the project needs automation and how to organize this process.
Hello, everyone. And I'm Ivana Kirik, and I'd like to welcome you all here. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the main purpose of test automation, core preconditions for starting automation of software testing. We'll talk about what projects require automation and when it's better to do manual testing. Then we'll proceed to the launch of automation project, talk about test automation pyramid, and talk about main reasons for automation fail. So let's go. Purpose of test automation. To understand whether you need test automation or not, you should first of all know the purpose of automation. So we perform test automation in order to make software testing more effective. With the help of regular auto tests, your QA team is able to spend more time on exploring new functionality instead of retesting the ready one. Here I'm talking about the automation of regression testing. Applying the automation principle, you reduce the expenses required for testing. You design and prepare scripts once and then just adjust them to functional or interface changes made in new versions. The duration of script support depends on the number and nature of software changes. And I have diagram. This diagram represents the ratio between time and cost of manual and automated testing. In my opinion, this is very indicative diagram. You definitely need to automate testing if you have a long-term project for a year and longer. Such a project consists of a number of subsystems that require regular regression testing. The manual test cases to run can be huge, and manual QA team can spend too much time on their checking. Automating routine actions, you accelerate all the process. If you have a team of more than maybe two developers, you also may need test automation. A developer should be sure that his modifications don't break someone else's code. Test automation helps check that faster. When you plan to support old versions of your software, then automation will be an effective solution. Running auto scripts, you can cover verification of same functionality on the different configurations. Developing software that process a large amount of data, for example, accounting systems, you can spend the whole life inputting data manually and analyzing the results. Manual testers are unable to provide a wide test coverage within minimum time, but the automation of this process can. If you develop software according to agile methodology, then you will have short iterations and frequent releases. You have no time to conduct regression testing manually with one sprint. And in this case, automation will be very much to be point. If one of them mentioned above cases relevant to a project, then it requests test automation. And next we talk about how to start automation. When you are sure that your project needs test automation, you should define that tests will be automated. What tests will be automated? How they will be automated, and what automation tool you are going to use. The effectiveness of automated testing also depends on these factors. So I include them into our today's webinar. What tests to automate? What to automate in order to improve software testing spending less money? First of all, it's functions that are used frequently and where there is a high possibility of bias detection by the end users. For example, registration procedure, maybe payments, and so on. It's important to cover with the scripts all the critical features to minimize the risk of bug occurrence. To save time and resources, you'd better to automate routine actions that can be formed with the several input files. Besides, you should prepare scripts for checking validation messages. Long end-to-end scenarios also should be automated. For example, a scenario for testing task management is user registration, test creation, test assignment to a particular person, changing task status, and so on. Tests that require accurate mathematical calculators. This can be relevant for analytical and accounting software. Also automate tests that will be executed on different hardware and software configurations. Also, we have things that we can automate. What not to automate? If you think that you can automate everything, that they should disappoint you. Some tests can be better not to automate as won't be effective. Automating won't be justified if you have test cases launched on an ad hoc basis and cases to verify user interface of your software. If your project doesn't have concept requirements and they are changing rather frequently, the test automation is not bad idea too. That you have a limited project budget and tight time frames, then it's better to perform manual testing. As in this case, automation may take more time and money than manual testing. Also, automation is not suitable for a single test run before software release. Come back to tests that can be automated. It's not necessary to automate all the tests at once, as kind of test hierarchy exists. I want to talk about automation pyramid. There is an automated testing pyramid that easily shows the dependency between the number of test scripts and the level of system architecture. You should have a large number of unit tests of the lower level and a small number of user interface tests of the upper level. Why exactly such a proportion? When software is tested manually, tester detects and reports the bugs. Developer fixes them by changing the code. That deploys a new build for the tester who finds new issues and opens them into a bug tracking system. The developer removes new bugs and prepare one more build. So we have build, deploy, and retest. The process may take too long time. If you automate user interface tests, then you also have to wait for a new deploy and end of the test run. And if some tests fail, you have to define the reason and run the test manually to make sure it's green. It takes time. Unit and component tests don't require the deployment of the whole project. You can run them after a module compilation. And the test, addition, and bug fixing can take several minutes. So you see that the lower pyramid level is the less time you'll spend on test execution. You'll be able to run a bigger number of tests within the same time. One more important question regarding automation tool. To accelerate automation testing, you can use a dedicated tool or framework. The choice of importer tool can make your automation fail. We have already talked about the test automation tools at one of our previous webinars, so I just single out several key aspects. First of all, don't use beta version only because they're cheaper. Probably they will have some functional issues. I think it's better to use well-documented tool with wide community support. Make sure that the tool can be integrated with software used on your company. There is no need to buy an expensive tool for one more testing. But if you are going to use Crazy often, then you can take a trial period to make sure the tool meets all your requirements. Test automation may fail because a number of reasons. One of the most common reasons is the desire to reduce expenses on hiring skilled test automation engineers. Some customers and project managers are sure that after attending courses on Selenium or any other automation tool, testers will be able to execute effective automation. That's not true. It's impossible to implement automation without thorough planning and prepared strategy. Forget about the approach automation for sake of automation. Too late start of automation also causes trouble. Sometimes clients apply for automation only when manual QA team exchanges and release date is too close. There is a common misconception that manual testing is much cheaper than automation one. In some cases, that is really so, but a large team of manual QA cannot replace test automation engineer and it will require more investment. Test automation will be effective if you want to automate unstable functionality of you constantly make changes in your project, when you will have to rewrite scripts all the time. So, the effectiveness of test automation depends on several case factors. And you should always remember that not every project should be automated. Hope today's information was useful for you. Thank you. Maybe it's all from my side.
Thank you, Ivana. It was really nice and interesting. And actually now we have a word for James Bryce from Intelligent Delivery Solutions. James is co-founder and delivery director of the company. He also has a very interesting presentation and many useful information about actually how and when it's useful to start test automation on the project. James, please go ahead.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining our partnered online webinar today with QA. I'd just like to quickly introduce myself and our Delivery Solutions group before jumping in. So I'm James Bryars. I'm one of the founding directors of our Delivery Solutions group. We're trusted by many organizations around the world to deliver innovative testing services, and combined with the best tech talent and technical testing and DevOps, we ensure our clients' projects are consistently able to launch without fail. We're straight to the point, no-nonsense solution providers with software quality at the heart of everything that we do. So we live and breathe by our motto, which is launch without fail. And we believe that partnerships with our customers are the most potent recipe for success. Because every one of our current customers are with us because they realize that we essentially we do actually care about what we do. So why are we here today? So we're here to understand when does a project need automation, and there's many different entry points to why you jump into wanting or requiring automation for a project. So we're going to go through a bit of a process to identify how to introduce automation to your project, how companies are positioning automation to the business, and then the process of launching automation into projects using a service. So software today is required to change at breakneck speed due to the high expectations and instant gratification from users and stakeholders alike. As a result, development must be able to handle this increase of pace. And to be fair, so far development has established practices, solutions so that they can enable themselves to continuously deploy software on demand. But the only downside to that, it requires a great amount of agility and lifecycle management. And as a result of that, testing is now often seen as an obstacle if it's unable to keep pace with change. So ultimately, the overhead associated with retesting often prevents a continuous update cycle being adopted and essentially the agility being impaired. So additionally, your competitiveness as an organization may be at risk as new products and services life cycle to market are lengthened, or worse still, in some instances can be released without effective due diligence and increasing the risks to those projects. So in a world where everything is expected to be delivered faster and without delay, testing is now labeled as a bottleneck in the software delivery process, which, I guess we're all, been party to those kind of conversations. So most organizations will understand the value of testing and like the idea of having efficient and robust testing practices. However, the question is how many organizations are actually willing to invest in the improvement of testing. So I've been involved with software testing for around 16, 17 years, and I'm still amazed at the number of times when that I've witnessed that the testing element of a project is still to this day treated like a poor relative and expected just to execute a bunch of tests at of predetermined scripts at the end of a project or sprint, and they'll fit into whatever windows available. So the question as to why testing takes so long is always asked. It's frustrating. And this is usually followed by a big sigh and roll of the eyes by the rest of the team and stakeholders when a tester tries to defend his or her corner. And more often than not, the root cause is that testing is often underfunded and under-resourced, and practices are expected to still keep pace with highly sophisticated automated development processes. And as a result, frequently show-stopping defects, make it into production, and everybody's up in arms. What about our reputation, and what's the cost of this to the business? And even to the point where it's like, well, we're looking for a scapegoat here, and this is awkward. Let's just blame testing. We've all been there. We've all been in those war rooms when that's happening. So when and more often than not, when we land on customer sites, we speak to the testers, and there's 9 times out of 10 we've been extremely impressed with their ability and technical knowledge. And in some instances, we've found testers that are capable to write code, and yet they're just not empowered to implement automated testing practices. And these are like the kind of frustrations. Yet the finger of blame is always pointed at the testers that they're not keeping pace, they're a bottleneck, they're slowing things down, and then especially when bugs and defects are found in live. So from our experience, we see 2 types of organisation out there. So we have we've labelled them as the new organisation and the old. So the new is more like an open door. They've got funding available, or at least they're open to investigating the creation of a business case and presenting something to the business. They have a capable testing team, but as always, time poor and overcommitted. Their environments, the whole development team, including testers, recognise that the need to manage their environments effectively, and they're open to creating and delivering whatever testing environments are required, whether it be like pre-production, specific environments for operational acceptance testing, those kind of things. So they're embracing all of the requirements. Test data, they accept that it is a requirement, and without it, you will struggle to have some sort of efficient testing practices in place. There'll be a build and deployment process, and that always carries testing in mind, even if it's just the fact that they're running the unit tests on a regular basis, and having the testing team involved from a sanity checking point of view. And from automation, it's recognised as part of the solution that's required to keep pace with development. So then we come to the old kind of outdated organisations that it's a bit more of a locked door. They're not really willing to look at funding. There's no interest. Why should we improve testing? It's just we drag somebody off the street to come and do this. Although they do have a capable testing team, and as always, time poor, overworked. From an environment's point of view, they just see this purely, this is a development area. We'll give the testers an environment, some piece of tin over in the corner of the room, and it may or may not run the application, but just work with it. But it's certainly not representative of a production environment. Test data, they'll think that it's okay to just pull production data from live and dump it into a test environment, and the testers just make do with it, fudge it, make it work to fit the tests. And then automated testing is just seen as a development task. Why would a tester be involved with automation? So those, from our experience, are two types of organisation that we frequently come across. So what I'd like to do is just go on and just give you a little bit of an insight into a couple of wins that we've had and how they've come about. So a customer of ours, I'd label them as an open door organisation. They really like the idea of introducing automated testing to help move them from a continuous integration model to a continuous deployment model, and then the potential then to move on to like a more DevOps kind of a environment. So the test team had been shouting about automation. The development team had recognized that that's something that they needed. So the business said, look, okay, if you want it, tell us what's required. So the testing team went away. They create like their own shopping list. They wanted dedicated environments, test data management processes, tooling, and obviously they're producing the costs associated. And they obviously identified they had to develop some sort of internal strategy that included automation. And then they actually had to highlight the time to implement the strategy and build out the test pack. And at this point, this is where, they they realised that they may have been overshot a little bit. So all was going so well until they realised that they required that additional time to implement the strategy and build out a test pack. And as we said before, they're overworked, over-resourced. Even though they've got a couple of the guys had technical skills, it was impossible to free them off from the day job. So it's like, well, okay, this is going to get tricky. What are our options? What do we do? We call in a contractor. That's always the first instinct. Not to worry. Surely we'll bring a contractor and we get a recruitment agency out and get them to see what's on the market. But once they started doing a little bit of investigation, they realised that the contractor option was a little bit more risky in itself. Is the fact that they're using a contractor will come in, could probably do a great job, create some assets. But what happens once that contractor moves on? Who's going to maintain those assets? We've already identified that the team didn't have enough free time, so they either go to the market and start recruiting technical testers. Again, it becomes an overhead. What do they do? So it's a bit of a conundrum. So that company, they went off. They interviewed a number of different consultancies, and ourselves included. Unfortunately, we stood out to being a little bit different with our intelligent test and delivery solution and our automation as a service, and it kind of struck a few chords with them. So we worked with the customer, and we knowing that the team they were time poor, we owned the full implementation, and we using our specific framework for implementing solutions. We delivered them a solution that worked for them, and they benefited from fully automated build and deployment processes, which resulted actually over time in a more robust build and deployment process, because you're continually testing that process. So when you come to launching into a production environment, that your process is actually working, and over time it does make it more robust. We had automated test management repository integration, so that any test assets, results, and test scripts, anything was all integrated into that test management repository, and then that resulted in much faster reporting. We managed to eliminate the 6 hours on a Friday afternoon of your test manager producing a test report, going around populating a spreadsheet, etc. We actually managed to do all this, as part of the solution. And then obviously the reduction in regression testing time and spend, which then allows your return on investment. And above and beyond, we empowered the actual existing test team, the manual guys, to be more creative and not be on this linear path of executing the same test week in, week out, week in, week out. we enabled them to have the confidence that they had the rigor with automation, but then, they could go off and, wander down different paths and put their minds in the actual, put themselves in the minds of an actual end user and what the types of things that those guys would actually do. And, needless to say that, the customer was ecstatic. And, so much so, they went off and they referred us to another company. That just proved that, we delivered a great job to this customer. So basically, one of the testers on the team had been heavily involved in what we were doing and, seeing the benefits. And, they've been bumping into a couple of friends at a couple of tester gatherings, and they've been talking about what they were going through. And this other guy, the friend, was actually, from we'll call it a locked door company. And they were having a difficult time. The culture was a bit of a disbelief and, system at play. And they were very skeptical about the whole testers, owning automated testing. And over time, they kept discussing, and there was updates going back and forward, and we started talking about the benefits of what the open door company had seen from using an external testing company to deliver an automated service. And then it convinced them, look, come and have a look. Come into our office. We'll give you a walk around. We'll show you what we do, and we'll show you the full process. You can actually see it for yourself, and I'm not just telling you a tale. So that's the two companies came together, and this is where it escalated very quickly, because once they'd seen the capability, the introduction was quite quickly, on the cards, and we went and met with the locked door company. We conducted a current estate assessment. We identified the gaps, and we presented those gaps, the gaps and the solution to fill in those gaps back to the customer. And then at that point, the customer's like, right, that's great. You've told us something that we kind of already knew, but that's not our problem. Our problem here is convincing our business to engage. They're all about the money, all about the budget, lack of, etc. So we said, okay, well, look, we're not just about delivering software testing solutions. We've been through this many times with many different customers, so we have experience in building business cases, and so that's what we did. So that we lifted that blocker, and we built a business case alongside the customer, which made sense to them, and demonstrated the ROI points, etc. The success of saving them money, making things faster, making things more efficient. So that gate opened, and we were enabled to move on. So we delivered a pilot of the full process, and again demonstrated the outputs and how we could potentially scale it to not only the test and development team, but stakeholders and key business decision makers. And once everybody was happy about that, we discussed agreeing the level of service and an associated monthly cost. We delivered the full managed service to the customer. So then, in turn, needless to say, as our previous customers, they were really happy with it, the benefits they were experiencing. They were getting continuous regression tests at all levels, not just user interface. We were working on services and APIs, validation of databases, so that they got a real full stack feel for automation, and the huge returns on automating at those levels. And again, so we reduced the cost of quality in their application. It wasn't, like I said, not just about the quality of the application, but quality of the process as well. And what they really liked about the engaging with us in this way was around how they could control the cost of automation by using this fixed monthly fee on-demand service, which actually fit really nice with the their needs and their budgeting requirements. And again, they've actually, recently recommended us to another potential customer through the networks. So it does pay to have a system, and it does pay to use the right solutions to work with our consultants, and it really helps customers and deliver quality. So I think you'd be glad to know that's me in a nutshell. Thanks for your time, and I'd love to take any specific questions. Apologies, just looked a bit dark my video, but it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, thank you, James. Really good presentation. Actually, we have some questions for Ivana and for James. Let me read it from the chat, and right after that, our speakers can answer. Question for Ivana from Anna. I have a project fully covered only by unit tests. What testing should I better to start with, manual or automated? Ivana?
Yeah, I'm here. I think it's a good question, but I don't have an absolute answer. I would recommend you a complex approach and have both manual and automation engineers engaged in the project. As you cannot cover unstatable functional with auto scripts. Besides, manual tester can update test documentation and even prepare test cases for automation. Maybe that's my answer. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. Actually, the question is such a general. James, maybe you also have some ideas. Maybe you want something to add to this answer.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I mean, from my opinion and experience, I'd always look to potentially start with both in line. We've had a lot of success by leading test deliveries with automation. As I mentioned a little bit earlier around the services and APIs type tests, you can really get in early with that kind of interface, and you can actually start producing assets before any interfaces are available, and you have your test cases ready to run. You're working with schemas in effect, so you kind of know what you're expecting. So for me, that's something that I'd probably run in parallel. It depends on the situation, to be honest with you, and your application. But if the opportunity is there, I would look to run in parallel with something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, James. And second question is from Yana. What language should I use to write auto tests? It should be the same language or on which the application is written. Ivana?
I think Autotests, AutoScripts is like the separate project, and it doesn't integrate with the native code of application. Thus, it's not obligatory to use the same language for automation. I think functional autotests, what we provide, interact with the target app source UI, so they are not dependent on the stage stack, and the tests interact with the app as a regular user does, performing actions aimed at UI control elements. I think your language for Autodesk can be different, like language what the application is written. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ivana. And the question for James from Kate. What risks can I meet if it's too late to start automation?
I mean, it's just the risk becomes around your ability to repeat your tests. So if you've manually tested everything, and then for some reason, a week or even days before you go live, and there's a major change, or you unearth some kind of major defect, and it means something quite significant change to the application, which requires a lot of retesting, then the risk, that's one of the the risks that that springs to mind, is that the fact that all of that manual retesting could take a hell of a long time from a man-day perspective. Whereas if you had automation in play, then you could kind of take those kind of changes in your stride, in full knowledge that the regression pack will cover X% of the application, and then the rest of it can be done a bit more targeted exploratory type testing. And I mean, to be honest, there's probably a lot more risks to automating too late, but that's one that jumps at the forefront of my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, James. And another question for you, James, from Chris. Do you have any statistics on the proportion of defects found in regression tests versus unit or system tests?
In short, not at this moment, but I could certainly pull something together.
Okay. And the question from Parsa Sarsit, what should be the size of automation testing? I believe it mainly means how much of the product should be covered of the cases, which sections of the product should be covered.
Again, if I'd look at this, you'd have to look at that on a per application basis. It depends on the technology, the architecture, and the various different opportunities to deliver automation. As I'll keep going back to that, that service API type approach. You can, not quickly, but it's quicker than going through the UI. But you can rack up a really, really high percentage of coverage of your functionality by automation at service and API levels and database levels. And you do it a lot quicker than what you would from a GUI front end. And again, it just depends on whether your application lends itself to that kind of an approach. The higher percentage, the better. Everybody wants to achieve 100%. I don't believe that's possible, but there's always some manual intervention that's required that will prevent automation, having 100% coverage. But if you're in like the 75 to late 80s percentage-wise, then you're doing a really good job from an automation point of view.
And actually,
I want
to have some suggestions.
I think the size of automation testing of automation team, I think it depends on the amount of functionality that must be covered. I think it also depends of your plans for the development and support of your project. First of all, you must create test cases, test scripts for automation, and then supporting it. And if you have large project, maybe you need 2 or 3 automated engineers. But if you have small project, maybe you need part-time 1 automated engineer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ivana, for a good addition. And another question from Parsa, actually to James, who will design the automation framework. I believe it really connects to the question about which test automation tools and framework actually to use. But yeah, maybe James, you have some suggestions.
Our go-to solution is a solution created by Odin. It's called Axe. It's a really powerful solution. It gets you out the blocks really, really quickly, and gets the team going. It has the ability to integrate with a number of different underlying execution tools. And too many to name, to be completely honest with you, but I think it's well worth looking at if anybody's considering automation.
Yeah, actually, I can confirm that X solution is really good one. Also working with Odin, and it's very good solution to use in terms of test automation. And there was a question from Masha for James. James, you're very popular today. What problems can I face while collaborating with QA vendor?
Control is one of them. If you come across a vendor that doesn't communicate and doesn't interact with you as a customer, and you treat the relationship as truly vendor supplier kind of relationship, then you will come across issues from a expectation and deliverables point of view, and it's from our perspective, we work in a partnership way, so we embed ourselves as part of the team, if you want, even though we may not be there all of the time. We are in contact, and we're providing updates, and we provide a lot of transparency to what we do. We have online portals for results and things like that, so you can constantly, you can just log in and see what's going on. But we work on that kind of basis, and it works for us. So I mean, you may come across organisations that once they've won the business, they close the door, and then you'll just get something delivered at some point in time. But whereas we deliver on a cadence basis for probably two week kind of cycles, you'll get something in terms of an increased test pack from us, as well as communications along the way.
And I want to add from a contractor side some topics. As a contractor, we like to work with projects and customers that have good documentation, good management, and understandable requirements. What they want to automate, what they want from our collaboration, and it's very important for successful collaboration, I think.
Yeah, thank you for the addition, Hannah. And thank you for the answer, James. Another question from Duncan. Are there advantages to sharing common development tools and skills in agile teams when it comes to development languages for automated tests?
Yeah, absolutely. That's I think that goes back to a question that was asked before. I agree totally that if you're implementing automation, then it's always sensible to cross your skills. So if your developers are all developing using Java, then it makes absolutely no sense for your testers to start writing automation in C# because the support network is kind of halved. So yeah, I totally agree with Duncan's. It's more of a statement, I think, than a question.
Yeah, thank you. And another one from Parsa for James. What should we consider while designing the framework?
Reusability, making sure that you're making components that are reusable across many tests, helps from a maintenance point of view. One of the biggest, which is kind of it isn't outside of the creation of a framework, but how you manage your test data, how do you refresh it, how you version control it, how it's integrated into your tests. That's key. Your environments management is also key, and it falls alongside test data. So those are three high-level kind of things that I would definitely consider when designing a framework.
Yes, and James, thanks, Ivana. I guess it's all questions for now. Dear attendees, if you actually find out that you have some other questions, some additional things you want to clarify, please feel free to write to James or to Ivana on the contacts you saw before. We'll be glad to answer. In social networks, follow Intelligent Delivery Solutions QATestLab, and we'll keep you updated once we have the record. So yeah, I have to say thank you for Ivana and thank you for James for joining us today. It was really good webinar. I believe they hope so. It's really interesting question from our audience. Thank you, dear listeners, and we are glad to invite you to our further webinars. Yeah, we'll update you once we have one.
Cool. Thank you very much. Thanks for having us, and thanks everybody for joining. It's been great. Thank you.
Yeah.